Do you guys remember that scene in Barbie where Barbie is asking Ruth what it is to become human? How do I become human? And Ruth, the creator of Barbie, takes Barbie's hands and says, just feel. And today I want to talk about 6 books that just made me feel many, many things and ultimately reminded me that I'm human. A lot of the books that I want to talk about today made me feel sad things, and that is okay. Every once in a while, we need a good cry, and it is very cathartic. It is like psychologically proven that reading sad books is good for you, I think. But it is very cathartic and it helps us express our emotions in a safe space. Here are 6 books that made me cry like a little baby. And I'm going to share a quote from every book so you guys can get an idea of the writing style. It was proof that I had not always been completely alone in this world. But I think I was also holding on to the loss, to the emptiness of the house itself, as though to affirm that it was better to be alone than to be stuck with people who were supposed to love you, yet couldn't. The notion of my future suddenly snapped into focus. It didn't exist yet. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh is a book that follows a young girl who decides to take an entire year and just sleep. She goes to a crazy psychiatrist who prescribes her many, many drugs so that she can just take a whole year off and sleep. This follows both of her parents dying and them leaving her enough money in her trust fund for her to be able to pay rent, buy food, and be able to live off of that money while she decides to take a year for rest and relaxation and fall into a drug-induced sleep. It depicts somebody who has everything materially, but there is still a huge hole in her heart, in her soul, that is causing her to be extremely sad. And she's trying to understand this. Why is this happening to her? And what can she do about it? She ultimately ends up trying to take drugs so she can go to sleep for a year. But at the end, she realizes that life is for the awake. Life is for the people that go out there and they do things. This book was really powerful for me because I think a lot of people, myself included, when we get really, really sad, we often think that we just want to run away, that we want to go hide in the woods, in a cabin in the woods. This person in the book tries that essentially to run away from everything. She comes to the realization that it's much more worthy to try and experience things than to just remove yourself from it. I also think if you're somebody who has never really experienced a lack of material things, but you still feel an immense sadness and you don't know why, this book can feel really relatable. And it just made me cry like a baby in neither end. It's not a plot-heavy book, and it's a much more of a character study. It just got me for some reason. It just makes you think about the value of life and being awake, going through every day purposefully and as awake as you possibly can. I am my own universe, a galaxy, a solar system. I am the warm-up act, the main event, and the backing singers. And if this is it, if this is all there is, just me and the trees and the sky and the seas, I know now that that's enough. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This was an incredible book about a woman growing up in Britain and her basically trying to find love, trying to find romantic love throughout her life. It is a memoir. What she realizes at the end is that love is all around. Love is in your friends. Love is in your family. Love is in your neighbor who looks out for you. It is not just found romantically, but it's also found platonically. This book does an amazing job of articulating the intimacy of female friendships and womanhood. This is a memoir, so I do want to be polite when I speak about it, but there is a part of the memoir where Dolly is retelling one of her friend's sisters passing away at a really young age from cancer. Dolly depicted this sister as someone who was so full of life and so full of love to give. And then she's saying, why is this happening to this person? Why is this happening to somebody who is so joyful? Then Dolly and her friends all come to do what they can to help support the friend whose sister passed away. A big emotional climax for everybody where these friendships are forever, and we can't do everything for you. You know, you can't save somebody's friendship can't save somebody's life, but it can be the rock that you need. I present it to you as a hypothesis. Intelligence without the ability to give and receive affection leads to mental and moral breakdown, to neurosis, and possibly even psychosis. And I say that the mind absorbed in and involved in itself as a self-centered end to the exclusion of human relationships can only lead to violence and pain. Flowers for Algernon. I've talked about this book before, but it follows Charlie Gordon, who is a character who has very low IQ, and he undergoes a surgery to increase his IQ. The book is written as a diary from Charlie's perspective, and you follow him as he gains that intelligence, then starts to realize that he might be losing it. This book, oh my God. Where do you even begin? Well, first of all, just the empathetic side of a person gaining intelligence and then the realization that they might be losing it. You see this decline start to happen in Charlie, and his ability to think critically, his ability to understand other people starts to decline, and you're just there like, oh my God. Oh my gosh. This book has really unique commentary because Charlie is never able to relate to anybody. At the beginning of the book, he starts out as somebody who has very low IQ and has very little emotional intelligence and cannot relate to anybody at all. People are often picking on him, abusing him because of his low IQ. But after the operation, he is starting to gain an incredible amount of intelligence. And he ends up being much more intelligent than most people, and even the scientist who created him. And even while his intelligence was increasing, there was still immaturity in his lack of emotional intelligence, making it impossible for him to relate to everybody else. He is so smart and his perspective so unique that he's able to point out so many faults in society that everybody else would not notice. And you see this through Charlie displaying a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, and having a hard time adjusting and fitting in. Charlie has a stark realization when he realizes that his value when he had a low IQ to his value now is the same, but people were still abusing him. People were treating him so poorly, but he is able to realize that as a human being, his value has never changed. Just an incredible novel. So very emotional, but so good. They've done a lot of good for each other. Really, she thinks, really. People can really change one another. This one is a bit controversial. A lot of people really did not like it, but Normal People by Sally Rooney is one of my most favorite books ever written. And I think that is particularly because of the time that I was reading it. It just landed in my lap just at the right time, and it just gutted me. It gutted me because I was also going through a relationship breakup. So as a young person, So I was able to really, really, really relate to the characters in this book. Normal People follows a very intricate relationship between Connell and Marianne as they go from high school to adulthood. Connell starts off as a very popular athlete. Marianne is more of a loner. She's a bit more aloof. Despite their differences, they form a incredibly deep connection that persists through varying stages of their lives. This novel deals with a lot of themes, including class, power, economics, but the ones that made me really emotional was such an honest depiction of young love and how people change throughout their lives and how a relationship changes throughout their lives. Connell and Marianne become different people from when you first met them to the end, but there's this one thing that's tying them together, that's keeping them sane through all of this, and it's each other. I was reading this when I was going through my first breakup, and it just made me bawl like a baby. Human knowledge is never contained in one person. It grows from the relationships we create between each other and the world, and still it is never complete. When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi is a memoir of a surgeon written as he is dying from stage 4 cancer. His life as a physician, where he often sees death, brings a really unique perspective as he is dying and as him and his wife decide to have a child. This book wrestles with questions like, what makes life worth living in the face of death? What does it mean to bring life into this world as yours is slipping away? Why do humans go on in the face of such pain? The book was never finished because the author passed away halfway through writing the novel. And there is art in this world that you encounter where you just feel like so grateful to have lived in a time where you can experience this art. And this is one of these books. The author, Paul, writes incredibly well. It is a very honest yet hopeful depiction of life. And you will not finish this book with dry eyes. Her hands are like my mother's hands, but there is something else in them too. Something I have never felt before and have no name for. I feel at such a loss for words, but this is a new place and new words are needed. My last book that made me cry like a baby is Foster by Claire Keegan, which follows a young girl as her family moves her for the summer into another family's home, and she comes to wrestle with the way she was treated at her home versus the way that she's treated now in this new space. Claire Keegan is a author of very few words, but it is just the right amount of words. She is an incredible author. I think humans are at heart very simple creatures. We want love and we want belonging and we want community. And Claire Keegan doesn't make noise of the human experience. She just writes it as it is in these very eloquent words. The girl in Foster essentially becomes aware of her own neglect that she was receiving from her family when she is now receiving love and care for the first time. If you have ever come out of a relationship, whether that's a relationship with your family, relationship with friends, a relationship with a romantic relationship, and only when you leave that relationship you realize that you were putting in way more than you were getting out, or that you just weren't being treated as fairly and as nicely as you think you should be, this book is for you. This book is it is so heart-wrenching because it's also from the POV of I think she's like 9 or 10. So such a young person to realize that love is out there and that I don't need to do anything to deserve that. And what I have been experiencing is not that. What I have been experiencing is in fact neglect. What a powerful realization and what an emotional roller coaster to go on with a character. Those are 6 incredible books that just made me feel something and reminded me yet again that I am simply a human being. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel for more.